Hello, everybody. Welcome to It Was Tuesday. I am your host. Well, this is your host, Nathan, and I am merely his vessel of information, James Chen, aka Jay Chenzor. I only talk about what Nathan demands of me, so that's what I will be doing today. So if you see on the docket over here, we're going to be talking a little bit about top tier discourse here. So this came about in a response to Punk, actually. Punk actually put out a tweet. So there's been a clip going around that's getting really popular, that's getting really viral in the FGC, which is of Hurricane getting Blanca'd by Problem X. Problem X on Twitter over here. So let's actually just bring this tweet up here. You know, I mean, look, you guys know how I feel about Blanca, right? You guys know how I feel about Blanca. But let's take a look at this clip over here. That was one touch. Oh boy. That was two touches. So there you go. That was Hurricane tweeting what Problem X did to him. And that's been going around a little bit here. And Punk responded, he retweeted this with a quote tweet here and says, I was told if you say anything about Blanca, you are downplaying Mena. So I'll be quiet and say, very fair, yep. And that's it. And my response to him was, it's tough. We have to stop, and this is what today's topic is going to be about, is we have to stop the discourse that when we talk up a character that we're somehow talking down those that play them. Blanca is super good, but can anyone win with him the way Mena does? Of course not. Mena is amazing, but Blanca is amazing too. Both can be true. So that was my response there. I also just wrote out a completely separate tweet myself where I talked about this a little bit. I basically said, if we say a character you play is strong and talk them up, we are not trying to undermine your skills or strength as a player. And then, of course, I added a joke. Unless you play Nakaruru in CVS1, you scrub. We have to stop this thinking, which is why so many players end up downplaying their characters. It can both be true that your character is super strong and you are a super good player. There will be assholes that try to discredit you, but their opinion deserves to be ignored if that's their logic. Winning with a top tier doesn't make you any less of a player in any way. And this is kind of an interesting discussion because, you know, this almost feels like it's going counterintuitive with something that I talked about in the past few weeks. I already had a whole discussion of, you know, do top tiers carry people? And I actually said, yes, top tiers can carry you. But of course, that discussion that I had months ago was basically in reference to beginner levels and intermediate levels. You know, having a top tier character or a character that's good will definitely help you in a lot of ways. But, you know, even in those areas, you know, even low tier characters like Zangief has an amazing win rate, you know, even on rookie and bronze and stuff, because he's just kind of a ridiculous character at low levels. He's terrible at the high levels, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that Zangief is top tier, but, you know, the whole point is that, you know, certain character strengths can definitely do you well at the lower and mid levels. But once we get to this top tier, we end up in this weird situation. The FGC has this thing where we feel like if we are playing a top tier character, that somehow people are trying to discredit us or tell us that, you know, we're frauds, we're being carried, that we're not good. And, you know, obviously some people out there embrace this, right? All you have to do is look at Mao, the super turbo player who uses Claw, and how much he embraces using a completely busted character. But I mean, it feels like it's kind of poisoned the way that we think about fighting games today, because this is the reason why I feel like people end up downplaying characters so much. We've reached this point right now where we're always trying to downplay our characters, and it's a habit, right? You see it from everybody, back even in Street Fighter 4, I used to try to downplay Cammy all the time because I was just like, she's not that good. She's not that good. And in fact, she was very good for a very long time. Now, granted, it was, to my own defense, it was just because she played in a style that I didn't use and I didn't like. So, that's how that worked. But in general, we see a lot of people downplaying their characters. I mean, even to the point right now where, we have seen a player like Mena, who Punk referred to in his tweet, even say that he felt like Luke is the most overrated character in Street Fighter 6. That Luke actually isn't that strong. And, it's crazy because at this point in time, it feels like most people kind of just know that Luke is like top 3, top 2, and a lot of people will probably put Luke as number 1. Now, admittedly, I've been learning a little bit of Luke, playing him, and he is a little more awkward than you would think, but clearly he's still very, very, very powerful. And where does this come from, And yeah, most Ken players saying that Ken is outside of top 7 now. A lot of people are saying Ken is not very strong. Of course, Ken being one of the only top 6 characters at EVO Japan in the form of Yukichi, right? Who clearly is doing just fine with Ken. It's coming from a point of pride. It's coming from, like I said, this discourse that seems to have been generated that when we talk about top tier characters, we are discrediting the people that use them. And again, I feel like we need to change this mindset. We need to change this mentality. Because again, even if your character is top tier, even if your character is number 1, I mean, outside of the extreme examples from the past, like my Nakaruru joke over here, like I can say all I want about Sabretooth in X-Men versus Street Fighter, but he's not even the best character in X-Men versus Street Fighter. He's just super easy to use at lower levels, But, outside of cases like that, of situations of Leroy when he first dropped into Tekken 7, a lot of that, interesting, flashy. I'll get to your point in a second. Outside of extreme cases like that, most of the time when you have a top character, most people can't win with that character. Most people are not going to accomplish the same things that top players do when they use top characters. That's just what it comes down to, right? So, if we do say Luke is one of the best characters in the game, or that JP is one of the best characters in the game, or that Blanca is one of the best characters in the game, there is no point in time in which we are actually saying that means you aren't a strong player. And I think we have to get to this point where we can discuss this properly and fairly so that people can be a little bit more objective about their characters, honestly. It's tough because what we end up with, the reason why I feel like this is important is because we do end up in this situation where top players are trying to downplay their character, who are, saying that they're not particularly strong. And what this kind of ends up doing is it kind of confuses a lot of the casuals and a lot of the people watching this kind of watching the game and trying to make sense, of the tiers and such. We see Luke's doing well at a lot of tournaments, and that's because he's a strong character, obviously. But, you know, when you see something like that, and then you see someone like a top player say, no, this character actually isn't that good, and that they're overrated, you know, it sets kind of, I'm not trying to, I can't, the word is escaping me of what I'm trying to say here. Basically, what I'm saying is that, I've said this in the past, tier lists exist, we discuss them for a reason, and what tiers do, more than anything else, is tell you how much of a win or a loss can be attributed to you. Can be attributed to you, right? So you can sit here and be like, you know what? You know, I can't win at Street Fighter 6. I'm awful. Who's your main? Lily. Well, then you're like, well, you know, might not be completely your fault. So you know, as a Lily player, in order to achieve the levels of someone like a Hibiki, which is, you know, almost impossible because Hibiki is ridiculous, you know, you're going to have to put in a lot more work. You're going to have to work harder than players using some of the other characters, you know. But, you know, if you're using a Luke in the game and you're playing the game and you're still not winning, and everybody says he's top tier, this is an indication that, you know, this is something that you need to do to improve your game, that you have to actually be as a stronger player. It tells you, you know, like I said, where you stand necessarily on the strength in terms of your own gameplay. And so when you have, you know, people basically saying, oh no, you know what, Luke is overrated, etc., etc., you know, it does kind of mess up the message. It messes up the what we understand about the characters, right? We have to be able to accept the fact that our character is good. And sometimes you should just enjoy that kind of situation. I've been playing Tekken. I've been using King. He's not a top tier character, but he's clearly good. And trust me, that has been nice. It has been nice using a strong character. It has been nice using a strong character, and I am embracing it right now, and I am having a lot of fun. I have been having a lot of fun with it. So you know, there is that aspect as well when you're using a top tier character to just be like, you know what, good, you know, my character's strong, I can win, it's fun, you know, etc., etc. It's nice using Tekken 8 King after playing Street Fighter 6 Geef, ain't it? Yes. And, you know, let's get down to, you know, what Flashy Flash said earlier, where he said most pro down players are saying their main isn't that high, so they avoid the Nerf hammer and keep their meal ticket. You know, Flashy Flash wrote this in quotes, meaning that, you know, he read it somewhere else, or that's something that others have implied. And that's an interesting one, because that actually does add into different layers, right? That adds extra layers into the discussion of, yeah, okay, I'm doing it for a reason because I don't want my character to get nerfed. I want my character to stay strong. And that's definitely a strategy, right? There's definitely strategies out there of people who, oh, Chris T's tweet about Ken. Wait, Chris, that's what Chris T said about Ken? Wait, I'm confused. All right. Anyways, let's continue on here, because I'm so baffled by that. Hang on. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? So, I mean, we've seen this weaponized before, you know, making sure that you keep the discourse, you know, about your character being weaker, to try to make sure they get buffs and stuff like that. I've seen it successful before when an otherwise mid-tier character was complained about enough that they actually got buffs when, you know, other characters needed them more. And, you know, goodness knows, that's one of the reasons why I complain about Kimberly online all the time, because I certainly would really, really, I would really, really like to have her get buffed. So I'm always going to be talking smack about Kimberly. I'm always going to be saying that she's not particularly strong. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? That's true. I mean, here's the thing, right? So Chris, you know, he has been, that's a good point. He has been putting some, you know, very, you know, very, very extreme takes on Twitter. And then let's discuss, you know, it's a good strategy, actually, honestly. So, you know what? More power to Chris. I will not begrudge that. I will not begrudge that at all. Because he wants people to come in and be like, what are you talking about? So, you know what? More power to him. So that I need to do that more. I need to do that more myself, right? I need to start yelling on Twitter and be like, discuss now. Oh man. So yeah. Yeah, so we're talking about nerfs and patches and stuff like that. So, you know, there is a little bit of that, you know, of trying to protect your character in this world of patches. Now, you know, obviously for Street Fighter 6, dear Lord, I mean, like, we're not getting patches fast enough. So I don't even know if that strategy is actually worth worrying about, you know, at this point. Because after, you know, this small patch over here, well, seemingly small patch with Akuma based on the location test, which of course is a really terrible way to base what we expect to see out of a patch. Because that's just a location test and there could be a lot more happening. We don't know, you know, patches, changes come little by little as we go. So they might still be working on stuff. You never know. We can't just interpret that location test as the actual patch. But yeah, the way that Street Fighter 6 has been changing, you know, when the next patch does come out, like, I don't even feel like you need to manipulate anything, dude. Just like sit there and and just learn your character's play, win, and wait till the next year when the next patch actually drops. Oh man. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion over here that, you know, basically what I'm trying to say is, if we're sitting here talking up Luke, and if we're sitting here talking up Blanca, you know, I don't want a player like MenaRD to feel like those who are talking about those characters that way are trying to discredit his wins or be like, oh, you know what? You're just being carried by your character or whatnot. Because to be honest with you, knowing which characters to go with and recognizing which characters are strong and actually maximizing that, especially two characters like Luke and Blanca who have extremely different play styles, is a skill and a talent all in itself, right? I mean, there are people out there like me who have picked some characters who I thought were strong, Kimberly, and turned out to be really, really bad, you know? And I stuck with her for so long because I legit thought she was a good, decent character. Okay, that's another thing I wanted to address, Mike Lee. I wanted to get there at some point. But I mean, now that you bring it up here, you know, you're saying, I mean, some are trying to discredit him. And as I mentioned in my tweet, those that are trying to use tiers to discredit people don't deserve to have their opinions like acknowledged. They just don't, right? Especially in a game where Street Fighter 6, where I'm at a point right now where I believe that the top 5 characters will vary wildly depending on who you're talking to, and that nobody is wrong. Because Street Fighter 6 has gotten to a point where there are literally 10 characters who could be in the top 5. And so, like, you know, while some people are like, oh, Luke and Blanca are the strongest, you know, everybody else is like, well, Cammy is clearly the best, and then Guile is the best, you know, Jury is the best, JP is the Blanca, DJ, you know, you name all these characters. We're at that point where they're like, anybody who tries to say you're being carried by a Luke or a Blanca, you just can't even take them seriously. You literally just can't take them seriously because the balance in Street Fighter 6 at the highest level, at the top area, so the top 10 characters, is so solid that nobody's getting carried by anything. None of these characters can carry you in any way, shape, or form, because a lot of the other characters are also so strong. Yeah, and as a person who personally doesn't believe Cammy is in the top 5, I've said this a lot too, kind of close to what Retro Greg is actually saying. There's always all these Cammys in every tournament, and at big tournaments, Cammy never wins. She never does well. She never places top 8. She usually falls apart before top 16. It's really weird. Honestly, I think she's a really volatile character. I think that's the problem with Cammy, but that's a whole nother story. We don't need to get into that right now. Right, Punk is, and Kazunoko, I would say. Kazunoko, maybe even just a little bit. Some people have said, like Lurker Spine says, I downplay Kimberly a lot. Look, I was a person who literally thought Kimberly was strong. And as I kept playing her, I was like, no, it is me who is bad. Kimberly is clearly better than this. I was out to prove she is strong. I've given up, dude. She's clearly not strong. She's clearly not very strong. And results will definitely coincide with that. We almost never see Kimberly's do well, but yeah, actually, Doria from downtown mentioning another topic here. So, sorry, today's been a very weird day. If I sound kind of rambly and kind of running around back and forth in my brain right now, I know my brain is just a little frazzled right now, so I apologize. I'm just in one of those modes right now. But we were talking about trying to talk about, using top tiers to discredit people. It's just not a thing. And especially in Street Fighter 6 right now, it's just not a thing, right? So if you are a Knuckle Do or a MenaRD or a Kakeru or anybody, if anybody's sitting there and just being like, man, your character is so strong, whatever, like, we can't see it as trying to downplay. Nobody is going to sit here and say, look, MenaRD is being carried by Luke and Blanca. Because no other Blanca is winning. And, whereas we have players like Chris Wong with Luke and such, we all know that Street Fighter 6 is kind of volatile. It's a very difficult game to be consistent in because the damage is high and the offense is very aggressive. The fact that MenaRD has been this consistent, winning FAV Cup, winning Red Bull Kumite, going 5-1, 5-0, 5-0 with his Blanca against Gachikun, Knuckle Do, and Punk, the fact that he won EVO Japan, like, anybody who sits there and tries to say that he's being carried by characters is just stupid. Because there is absolutely zero evidence, and all the evidence in the world, that he is not being carried, that it's that it's literally Mena who is winning. MenaRD is one of the most ridiculous players that I've ever seen. His level of skill, his level of talent, his level of dedication is unmatched by a lot of people, a lot of the players that I've seen in the past. He is slowly but surely putting himself into that GOAT category, right? I mean, he has to be something that you talk about. Obviously, he hasn't been around as long. He hasn't played in as many games, as some of the other people. But again, that conversation is there. You're not wrong for saying, like, should we think about putting Mena in the GOAT conversation? Like, you're not wrong about making that suggestion. Clearly, he's very, very strong. So, trying to attack someone by saying your character is top tier just doesn't fly. Just doesn't fly in this day and age, especially because there's so many competitors in Street Fighter 6. And again, you don't see anyone else coming nearly as close to Mena in consistency. It's just not there. It's just not there. Oh, if we're talking only Street Fighter GOAT retrograde, yeah, MenaRD is already in that conversation, like free, right? He's already there. So yeah, we like basically if people, I mean, again, like I said, I'm victim of this too. I used to do this all the time. You know, when people were saying Cammy was super good in Street Fighter 4, you know, I wasn't winning with her. So my mindset was like, she's not that good. She's not that good because I'm not winning her. If she was that good, I'd be winning with her, blah, 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 you know. And so you want to try to downplay the characters. We have so many people downplaying their own characters because they're scared that if, you know, they actually say, yeah, my character's freaking broken, like it would undermine their accomplishments. But I don't think, well, we are still at that point where people will do that. But that's my whole point, is that we need to stop. This is why I call this the top tier discourse. We have to end this conversation, you know? It's like when people are saying like, oh, Kobe is nothing because all he did was copy Michael Jordan, right? Why wouldn't you copy the greatest basketball player of all time? Why wouldn't you want to learn, right? Pick a top tier. Clearly, Kobe picked the top tier to use. And he became top tier himself, right? That's not a dig. You know, saying, oh, Kobe is just a Michael Jordan clone is not a dig. If that's what it takes to become a top player, why isn't everybody copying Michael Jordan? It's that easy, right? So same thing. Why not you just play Luke? Why not you just play JP? It's that easy. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. And, you know, there is, Doria, I talked about his comment. He said, it's the reason why Snake Eyes can compete at top level. It's the pilot, not the character. There is also that factor as well. You know, a lot of people have said to me, if you hate Blanca because he's everything Kim wants to be, but better, then why don't you play Blanca? You know, honestly, I'm probably going to try to play him at one point because I just want to see how he feels. But at the same time, you know, there is this level of character gelling as well, right? And again, this is what I mean. If you're MenaRD and you have the ability to almost go to any character that you want and gel with them, like a Luke, like a Blanca, like I said, they're fit two very different archetypes. That is a talent and that is a skill. And I think that that is something to be very, very proud of. You know, if people are like, hey, Luke is so strong, hey, Blanca's so strong, your response to them should just be, you do it then. You do it, right? Can you do what I'm doing right now? And really, that's all that needs to be said. So I don't think there's anything wrong talking about characters being strong. I think it's healthy. Like I said, it's very important that we understand tiers do exist in fighting games. People love tier lists. People love talking about it. People love hearing about it. And I think that's really important. Oftentimes when I talk to other players, some of my most common questions are, where do you think blah character stands? Where do you think this character is? Do you think this character is actually top? Where do you think this character stands? Because it's a really, really important discussion to gain an idea of what the environment, what the ecosystem of the game is, basically. Tiers are the blaming your teammate in League of Legends of the FGC. Wow. Interesting. I mean, they are conversation starters that make for fun discussions, but like I said, they're also important to know because like I said, when I try to teach somebody fighting games and they go, hi, I want to learn Street Fighter 6. And I'm like, who are you using? And they're like, Luke. And I'm like, okay. Then I can set their expectations properly. But if I sit here and I go, hey, you like Street Fighter 6, who are you going to use? And they're like, I like MenaRD. I can just be like, all right, here we go. You know, like it's important to know your starting point and know the kind of things that you're going to have to overcome. You're going to have to work harder as a MenaRD player than a Luke player at the lower levels and at the middle levels and when you start getting stronger. It's just truth. It's just facts, right? But again, once you get to the highest levels, it doesn't matter as much. I mean, it still matters, clearly, because there are not very many Menons and Lilies in top 8s and stuff like that. Obviously, there are strong characters, but again, in the case like Street Fighter 6 and a lot of fighting games these days, there's a lot of top-tier characters. And in a large, and most of them can win. I mean, I know, for example, at Tekken 8 at Evo Japan, Lily won. Chikurin won with Lily. Lily's considered super strong, one of the top tier characters in that game. Yeah, it's going to happen, and they're going to give you the best chance to win. Of course, because when you're a top tier character, you just naturally have that benefit. But again, not everybody's doing it, and not everybody can do it, because some people aren't going to gel. Like, I don't think that Snake Eyes, with all of his talent, could win Evo with Luke. I just don't see that as a thing, right? He gels too much with a character like Zangief. So I don't see there a reason for, especially in Street Fighter 6, for anybody to feel like they are being downplayed when their characters are being upplayed, honestly. Is there a website where I can check the upcoming big Street Fighter 6 tournaments? I mean, the biggest ones are going to be the offline premieres that Capcom Cup has announced that they're going to be a part of, for sure. DS Tofu just wanted to say, while we're talking about Blanca, still think his original sprite is green, not yellow. Yellow. I mean, yeah, you don't have to be into tier discussion. You don't have to be a person who really likes talking about tiers, because there's a lot of people who find that as a crutch, find it that people take it too seriously, etc. And I agree with that. I understand that. There's definitely a lot of people who take tiers too seriously. And I feel like part of that is also the top players who feel the need to downplay their characters, or are worried when their characters are talked about in a positive fashion, that means that they are being downplayed as a player. I don't know how to, address this kind of thing. I don't know if there is a good way to really make it so that, players don't feel this way. But I feel like we need to stop top tier shaming at this point, which is the same message that I mentioned in the other one, even at the lower end. Top tier shaming has to stop. Unless, like I said, it's a game that's clearly broken. But even then, let's take a look at that Leroy example from Evo Japan, right? When there were 7 Leroys in top 8. When a character is that strong, you will see 7 Leroys in top 8 and 6 Tanyas in top 8. And in that situation, do you feel like the player is going to be blamed, or do you feel like the dev is going to be blamed? There is no way in that scenario anybody is going to be blamed for picking a top tier character like that, because clearly they're super strong. Yeah, Evo Mir, the Cronin life at that one point, where it was just like everybody was using Cronin in King of Fighters 15 because he was that strong. And I don't think anybody got mad at the KOF players for using those characters. So in Street Fighter 6, that's the thing. If you're a top player and you're scared that people are saying your character carried you, if that were true, there would be 6 Lukes in top 8. Right? If that were true, if that were true, everybody would be playing him and being able to use him really, really well. The fact that you're the only Luke that's really doing it, Evo Japan top 8, the only repeat character, top 6, the only repeat character was JP, right? And so, nobody's sitting there saying Kakeru is carried or whatever like that. It's just not, there's literally no foundation for that argument to stand on, honestly. Yeah, and again, when you're playing for cash, you're going to use the broken characters. You're going to use the best characters. Uh, wait, when Book won, when he won his Evo win, who was Book using at that time? Which character was it again? Because I know Tekken 7 ended with like Fang and Kunimitsu were super strong, blah 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 blah. So I hope he wasn't less celebrated. If so, I mean that's just unfortunate, honestly. But yeah, so that I'm trying to read what is this discussion about over here? Interesting. Okay. He won the 7 Leroy top 8. Oh. Well, okay. So to be fair, Book wasn't going to be alone. It doesn't matter who won that tournament. They all would have received the same reaction, I think. So whatever, at that point, it's like whatever. The game was a mess at that point. It was clearly Leroy is dominating. And so everybody's just going to be like, whatever at that point. So I wouldn't worry too much if I was Book in that situation. But yeah, again, logically speaking, if you think about it, if you think that people are saying you are being carried by your character because that character is so strong and they're discrediting you, if they were right, you would see like the 6 Lukes in top 8. The fact that you don't, and you're the only one doing so well with the character consistently, there might be a lot of Lukes in different top 8s of different tournaments, but it like fluctuates. It's hard to be consistent. We'll see one Luke do well one week, another Luke do well another week, etc., etc. There is MenaRD is the only one that has this level of consistency because we don't see all top 8s being run by like the same Lukes over and over and over and over again. Clearly means that, the character is not carrying you. And so in your brain, you can't feel like people are insulting you or trying to slight you by saying your character is top tier. So I don't think that there's any worry about that, honestly. I don't think there should be any concern that people are trying to discredit you. And if they are, they're just wrong. They are just wrong. So yeah, we did have 11 Lukes in Capcom Cup, which was the most used character. But again, like how many, let me see the results here. Capcom, whoops, let's just go to Liquipedia. Again, shout outs to Incross for creating one of the most useful sites over here. Liquipedia, FGC. So let's go to the fighting game wiki. Let's go search for Capcom Cup 2023. And we have trying to find the results. Oh, Capcom Cup 10 is what it's called. So if we look at the top 8 over here, we had a Ken, we had a Luke in Kuano, we had Chun-Li, Lashar, JP, DCQ, a Luke in NL, a Luke in Chris Wong, Gachikun with the Rashid, and Uma with the Jury. So we definitely did have 3 Lukes. So we definitely had the most Lukes at Capcom Cup in the top 8. But again, it's just one of those things. You look at a player like NL and Kawano, and you look at a player like Chris Wong, and are you really going to say that these are not consistent players, that these are guys who are getting carried by their character? Kawano is an Evo champion, right? Chris Wong won 3 offline, placed second at worst in all 3 offline tournaments outside of Evo in the last year. And NL has been super consistent and, has been playing best characters for a very long time. So I don't know if you can really sit there and say, like, these characters were carried, right? And if we even get into the top 16, Kusanagi was a Ken, Sien was a DJ, Fudo was a DJ, Phenom was a Ken, Nephew was a Jury, Knuckle-Doo was Guile and Cammy, MenaRD had Blanca, JP, Luke. Dual Kevin had Luke and Rashid. So again, even in the top 16, there aren't that many Lukes in Capcom Cup. A lot of the Lukes fell by the wayside in the pool stages, right? It definitely could get them there, but it couldn't carry them all the way through. And yeah, there's 8 DJs, 7 Kens, 6 JPs, as Metastase says, Metastase? I don't know. But yeah, the results, like, they're going to help get you to that point, but you still have to be good to get past that point. You still have to be extremely good to get past that point. So, I mean, at this point in time, I feel like I'm just kind of talking in circles, so I apologize. If anybody out there has any specific points they kind of want to discuss over here, or any other questions or any other, discussion point they want to add to this, I really hope we can get over this stigma of using top tier characters. It's fine to use top tier characters. Like I said, I'm happy that in Tekken 8, my character is actually really strong. I think it's fun. It's really nice to have a character that doesn't suck. You're not going to score any more brownie points for using low tier characters. Obviously you can become a fan favorite like a Random or a Lily. A Hibiki, using the lower tier characters, and that's really cool. But in the long run, how much is that going to get you, right? And, in theming with other topics that I've talked about in the past, $1 million changes things. If you're in it to try to win $1 million, you're going to play the best character. You're not going to do yourself any favors playing low tier characters and being a low tier hero. Sure, people may love you, but in the end, what's that gonna do, right? Honestly. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And it may sound like I'm talking directly to MenaRD, and part of me kind of is, because I said something about Luke, and he was just like, what? Nah, like Luke, clearly overrated character, and I was like, whoa. Like, I was clearly not trying to say anything about, Mena wasn't even in the video. I clearly was not trying to say anything about Mena, but, it's tough. And especially for someone as young as Mena is, it's hard because, everybody's coming after you at this point in time. Everybody's trying to take you down for whatever reason because you're the favorite and everybody wants to see underdogs win, etc., etc. And Punk even to the point where he's like, I can't say anything about Blanca being cheap because then it sounds like that I'm downplaying Mena, etc., etc. We're just at a point where we need to get over this, and that playing a top tier character, embrace it, man, embrace it, and just say, and like I said, just tell everybody else, if this character is so top tier, you do it. Come on, let's go. And strength and easy are not always the same thing, for sure. In Super Turbo, the best example is that the 2 best characters in the game are Claw and Dulcim. And I'll tell you, one takes significantly more work to get good at than the other. Significantly more work to get good at than the other. Significantly more work. Vega is not, Claw is not hard to use. Anyways, as a spectator, I'm bored of seeing the same people win all the time. That's why we love the underdogs, right? That's why we love the underdogs. So, it's cool. And yeah, you want to root for the underdogs to win because you don't like seeing the same people win over and over again. But, in order for them to lose, the other players have got to get better, whether that means just leveling up, or 2, maybe switching away from a bad character, right? But again, in Street Fighter 6, nobody is going to sit there and tell you you're making a mistake by playing Guile or Chun-Li or DJ or Blanca or Cammy. Uma won Capcom Cup with Jury or JP or Ken. Like, all of these characters clearly can keep up with Luke. And so, you're just not in a position to really have any argument at this point. So, oh, man. So, yeah. After seeing that Guile get destroyed by Blanca, maybe I'm making a mistake by picking Guile. Well, to be fair, in that clip, Hurricane made 2 bad guesses, right? And I'm not saying that Hurricane was at fault for that. That's fighting games, right? He just tried to rush in right away and paid for that. And the second one, he thought Problem X was going to throw him. So he tried to backdash. People are like, take the throw, but Blanca can combo after the throw in that particular setup. So that wasn't as easy as it sounded either. But regardless, that's just the situation, right? That doesn't necessarily mean Blanca murders Guile, even though MenaRD also 5-0'd NuckleDo, right? But again, like, what other Blanca players are doing that? Who else is going to 5-0 NuckleDo with Blanca, right? It's just, it could happen. It could easily happen. Evo Japan top 8 was Potato Man, Liang Liang from China, who's also an amazing Blanca player. It could happen. But again, if it does, and Blanca does turn out to be super top tier, and you're a Blanca player, just be like, good. Good. But then the problem is you'll see a lot of Blanca players try to downplay that because they're not winning with the character in the same way. Yeah, they're just like, you know what? I'm not winning with this character, so clearly this character's not good. He's got so many weaknesses. That's right. That was another thing that I wanted to talk about. Really important is that when you use a character, you see their weaknesses over and over and over and over and over and over again. When you fight against another character, you see their strengths over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's one of the things that happens, because whenever you play a character, something will drop or something will miss, and you're just like, God, what is wrong with this character? But when you fight against them, you're like, this character is so stupid. What is this mix-up? This is so dumb. Right? So it's easy to want to downplay your character. It's, sometimes one of the reasons why when I play online and I'm fighting against somebody else, I'm like, yeah, your character's kind of not good. What are you going to do about this? Sorry, kind of a situation, because, I feel like sometimes you do just have to acknowledge the fact that, what the character's weaknesses are as well. If you just keep getting mad at everything you get hit by, and then just getting mad every time your stuff doesn't work, that's a problem. And like I said, I originally tried to feel that way about Kimberly, and I was hitting people with all sorts of great stuff, and I was like, see, Kimberly's good. So I was on the try to make Kimberly strong standpoint, but man, as everybody has started to learn about what her weaknesses are and how to fight her, it's getting hard, man. It's getting hard. Once Blanca becomes too predictable, he really gets exposed. And see, this is the problem with that kind of an argument, Metastase. The problem with that argument is that the situations that Blanca can put you in are true guesses. I saw Chris T's tweet about this. He's like, there is no answer to this. This is literally a guess. Like, it's literally a guess. And so what happens then is the risk versus the reward, right? So Kimberly puts you into a guess, but then she has to put you into 5 more, where Blanca puts you into 1 guess and you died, right? So this is where we actually get to where the character strengths actually come from. Also, how often can I get into that guessing situation? How often can I put myself there? And how many guesses are there? So how many different situations are there? The fact that if Blanca activates the Blanca Chan with OD electricity, he can go for an overhead, and even if you block it, he can go for a second overhead because Blanca Chan is still bouncing there, is what makes him strong. Every character gets exposed when they're too predictable. But that's not the point. That's the human factor. What we have to understand is what makes a character strong is how much opportunity, how easily they can put themselves into that situation, and what is their reward. What is their reward? If Kimberly did as much damage as Blanca right now, she'd be amazing. But fact of the matter is, she starts at 90%, and like if she hits you with a spray can, she likely will max out, cap out at 3,000 damage with 1 level super. And that's the problem, right? So, you know, I could be like, yeah, well, Kimberly, you know, she's not good when she gets exposed because she gets predictable. No, Kimberly has amazing mix-ups. She's going to mix you up. She just has to mix you up 1,000 times compared to a lot of other characters. And therein lies the difference right there. So it's just not as simple as, oh, once you realize Blanca's options, again, if there is an answer to his mix-ups, then it's not a mix-up. If there is an answer to a mix-up, it's not a mix-up. It's one of my most famous axioms at this point, right? If what you learn about Blanca is that, oh, if I just do this, nothing can hit me, then it's not actually a mix-ups, and Blancas will stop using it at the highest levels, and they will go with a different mix-up. If you create a mix-up that only goes behind and can't stay in front, it's a useless mix-up, because then as soon as people see you setting it up, they will always block cross-up, and there's no point to it, right? So people won't use it. So you always have to have 2 different options at least to make it a really, really strong mix-up. Chad Mode says, Kimmy getting EX air throw after H elbow soon though. Will that help? No, not at all. That's not gonna do anything. Literally nothing, except maybe a little bit better corner carry and a little bit better Oki. But you never land H elbow. You just don't. And I bet you will do almost just as much damage without having to spend the OD meter afterwards. The question really becomes, is the H elbow going to launch them in a free juggleable state? Or does the OD air throw is it going to gain more juggle points? Because those are 2 very, very different buffs. If H elbow puts them in a more freely juggleable state, then it's really not going to do much, because then you can launch them. You can already juggle them with drive rush. There's not going to be a lot of crazy new combos you're going to gain out of it. However, if OD air throw actually gains extra juggle points so that it can combo after the H elbow launches, that means that the OD air throw is going to combo in some other situations that it has never done before. And then we would have to experiment to see if that makes it a stronger move and more useful. So that's basically it. But again, Kim's weakness are her defense and her neutral, and none of the changes that she's getting address those, except for maybe HK Tatsu actually being air invul earlier. If that's the case, she might actually be stronger, but just by a tiny bit, honestly. It's the difference between Blanca's mix-up and what JP's level do before people figured it out. Once people learned that you could jump out, it became less reliable for damage and more of a let me force a parry or block. Yeah, JP's level 2 is the most useful when it's that true block string setup, right? You have to make sure that they're stuck in it and they can't parry it, and then you can blow them up. So yeah, it's not just a free I win situation unless you're burned out. But for the most part, you know, it's starting to, it has lost a little bit of its luster. It's still great. Don't anybody let you be fooled into thinking JP's level 2 is not great. It's still really good. Isn't it more on having strong tools can carry the work of that character rather than the lesser ladder? Explain that one to me in context a little bit more, Sora. Again, like I said, yeah, that's what makes the difference between a top tier and a lower tier character. You know, when you're saying strong tools that can carry the work, that is what I said, basically, of how many mix-ups do you have? What's your reward for the mix-up? How often can you get to the mix-up? Those are considered strong tools, right? If you have really, really good neutral that leads into a knockdown, that leads you to a mix-up, like Cammy does, for example, that's a strong tool, right? If you're like Blanca and you have a Blanca Chan that makes a 50-50 mix-up where you either lose 60% of your life or 40% of your life, that's a strong tool. So when I say, having a good ability to set up mix-ups, having good damage, and how easily you can get to the mix-ups, those are part of the tool sets, honestly. Yeah, again, Ken's tool set. So Sora says, like, how on one end, Ken's kit is versatile in any situation compared to Geef's struggle to actually get in on offense against the competent Ken. Yeah, that's exactly what it really is that Ken's tool set is stronger because he has better neutral, he has better footsies, and frankly, when he knocks down Geef, because Geef has no defense, Ken's mix-up is actually really scary to deal with, right? So yeah, Ken's tool set is definitely stronger in that he can get mix-ups better, he can play neutral better, he can get to the mix-ups better, and Zangief cannot, right? Like, Zangief, like, what is one of his mix-ups? It's always just like this random SPD mix-up, but the problem is Zangief can never get there. He can't get to the SPD mix-up because he can't win the neutral. So, by saying, give him better tools in neutral, that all comes part and parcel with the tool set of getting to your mix-up a little bit easier. That's part of the tool set. That can either be having better moves for neutral, having a skip neutral move, or all sorts of other different options, or, fireballs that force people to come at you kind of thing, those are different ways to get around that. So all those tool sets all apply to making it so you can, oh God, Sora, don't do it. Sora says, in other words, bring back Geef's green hand. Why do you think Ken's dominance started to phase after the game's early days? Mostly because Jinrai and Dragon Lash are extremely powerful when you don't have knowledge against them. They're really, really strong tools. And once you start understanding how to fight those weapons, they're still strong, but people who are more aware know what their weaknesses are and can take advantage of them a little bit more. I personally still think that they're very strong, and I personally still think Ken is very strong. But even I'll admit, being the person who was like, Ken is clearly number one, like, I have him at number 3 now, maybe? I don't know. That's the thing. Like, he is dropping a little bit. He actually is dropping a little bit. I'm starting to understand it a little bit more. But again, Ken is a character who has enough tools that he can win any fight if he needs to. Like you said, his kit is very, very versatile. So he can play a more defensive game. He can play a more aggressive game. And that's a really powerful thing to have, honestly. So, yeah, that's what I've got for now for this topic over here. So thank you guys for tuning in. Again, top tier, we, even if we can't convince everybody to stop shaming other people for using top tier, we have to, as players, stop being shamed by using top tier. Let all the people cry about your character being top tier and then just be like, so? I'm winning on the character select screen. Deal with it. Suck it, kind of a deal. So, don't let that top tier discourse affect you. You're doing the right thing. You're playing well. And if nobody else can do what you're doing, there's no way anybody can talk you down. No way anybody can talk you down. So take pride in your success with your top tier character. Yeah, I mean, we praise character loyalists, if it's a top tier character, hey, it's the way it works. So, oh man, the top tier argument will hold some ground if mirror matches weren't allowed, but they are. Right. So that's everybody's main complaint, is that it produces mirror matches and people hate mirror matches. But again, I don't think people hate mirror matches as much as all of them are mirror matches. if we get the occasional Luke mirror match, I think that's fine. And again, mirror matches can be really super fascinating if you examine them right. Mirror matches are a problem when it's just like, oh, it's JP. Oh, it's JP. Oh, it's JP. I really think JP is one of the most fun matches to watch because it's really interesting to see how both of the JPs approach it, because JP inherently ruins JP's game plan. And that, to me, makes it fascinating. So I love that mirror match. Just not 9 times in a row, right? That's just really what it comes down to. So, oh, man. All right. There you go. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. For those of you on Twitch, don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking about these 2 subjects over here in just a second. But for those of you on YouTube, thank you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Hope you guys appreciate that I've been trying to do more long form and short form content for you guys. Trying to give you guys a variety of both. I know some people don't like the long stuff. Some people prefer the long stuff. So I'm trying to make sure I do a nice combination of both. So don't expect these topics to go long, which probably means they will go like 5 hours each. But there you go. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Please make sure you leave a comment below. Let me know if you're enjoying my videos and such. And, you know, the day that this podcast graced your ears was the most important day of your life. But for me,
it was Tuesday.